Good morning. I know I see you every month, but it's always good to see your face. Yeah, so we always come back to the food safety aspect of the meal, right? Of course, we want to be able to pick out nutritious foods, but for a lot of holiday meal prep, whether it's Memorial Day, 4th of July, Labor Day, any of these big holidays where a lot of people are going to get together and eat, we do want to talk about food safety. And so I'm going to first direct everybody to our turkey website. We get enough questions throughout this time of year on, what to do with a turkey, how to thaw it safely, how to cook it, how to do all these sorts of different things with that bird. And so we do have an entire page devoted to this online. So extension.illinois.edu/turkey will get you there. It's got a number of different recipes for side dishes, but also, again, those tips for how to thaw my bird, how to cook my bird, how to use leftovers, all that stuff. And we always come back to 4 general topics for food safety, regardless of what type of season it is or what type of meal. And those things are clean, separate, cook, and chill. So the cleaning is always about hand washing and making sure that as we're moving between different tasks. So if we're working on the bird and now we're going to go work on the pie, we're definitely going to have to wash our hands in between, right? If we're working with raw meat and we're going to go now work with something else, make sure that we're washing our hands regularly. Cleaning also applies to kind of in the separation step of if we're using cutting boards and knives and other tools, we're making sure to separate the tools that maybe have touched raw meat from the tools that are going to be touching the ready-to-eat foods like the gravy and the side dishes. Clean, separate, and then cook. So, right, taking temperatures, getting yourself a nice food thermometer, the pop-up button type thermometers that come built into some turkeys are an option too. But if you have a meat thermometer, use that. You can look at USDA makes for birds in particular makes 3 different points of entry to just temp that such a large, a large bird like a turkey. We're going to temp it at multiple places just to make sure that all the different parts of the meat are at that correct temperature. And then the last one is chilling. So any leftovers that you have need to be put away. So I know that that's one of the challenges I see, at least in my extended family gatherings, is we have a lot of food brought in. We have a lot of food that sits out at room temperature for a long time. And some things are very much shelf stable at room temperature. There's no food safety risk. But some of the other items, unless they're being kept hot or on ice, we do want to put those leftovers away within 2 hours of them coming off of any heat. So if that turkey comes out of the oven, we start the timer at 0 seconds. And then at 2 hours, we want to start putting away any leftovers on that bird. And hopefully in 2 hours, right, you've had a chance to relax, enjoy the meal, get seconds if you want it, and then you're ready to kind of pack it up and you can continue socializing and visiting with all your friends and family. So I don't, but I know that that's something that I'm sure other people maybe are thinking in their heads of, oh, Caitlin's here, we got to be food safe, which I appreciate. I feel like I've had more than my fair share of foodborne illness in my life, so I'll take anyone that wants to be a little extra food safe, even if it means a joke at my expense. I'll take it. Yeah, so if you have the ability, like if you've got a big enough refrigerator, clear out some space for that, right? Depending on the size of your bird, it can take a little while. So USDA recommends about 24 hours for every 5 pounds of meat for that thaw time. So you'd have to do a little bit of that math. I find that it seems to take longer for me But I don't know if that's because I've got maybe my fridge set a little cooler, or I've just got more stuff in my fridge, and so meat just seems to take longer to thaw out. But that is kind of the general rule of thumb, is about 24 hours, so 1 day for every 5 pounds of meat. So if you have a 20-pound bird, you would be looking at about 4 to 5 days to thaw it out. So if you're thinking you want to, okay, we want to have this ready to go in Thursday morning, then got to backtrack how many days depending on the size of your bird. We always want to thaw in the refrigerator is like preferred option number one. If that is not an option, if you don't have the fridge space for that, there are other options, one of which is in cold water, but you're having to change that water out every 30 minutes. So you need to make sure that you're being very aware, right? Set a timer on your phone or on your watch so that you can make sure, okay, we're changing that water out. We don't want to let that water sit and get too warm. Yes, that will thaw your bird faster, but it also allows for bacteria that are on the bird to start growing in that water, and we just don't want to deal with any of that. On the off chance that you have a microwave that's big enough for that, and you have a bird that's small enough, you could try that, but you're probably not going to get great quality cooked meat out of that. So thawing in cold water, or preferably in your refrigerator over a course of many days, that's going to be your best bet. Yeah, so especially with if you are doing a turkey or another, I mean, even like a ham, for pretty large pieces of meat, we want to be very aware of where that bird, especially the raw meat, has been touching on surfaces, and if any, water droplets, even some ice coming off the bird as it's thawing, really making sure that those surfaces that may have touched any of that raw meat do get clean. Soap and water is plenty. If you want to do a diluted like bleach and water solution, you can certainly do that. But generally soap and water will be great. And then for taking temperatures, USDA always has great, I've got magnets in my office now. I ordered some, so you can have those on your fridge. So for the bird, you're looking at 165 degrees Fahrenheit. Same for if you're doing a chicken, maybe a smaller bird for a smaller party. 165 as well. If you're doing other types of meats, certainly you can check out USDA for more of those times. And then the big thing that I always find is, how do you keep all these sides, right? You have multiple desserts, you've got multiple, you've got potatoes and green bean casserole and pie and all these different recipes. If they need to be kept hot or they need to be kept cold, if you start running out of space, what do you do? So some options would be external plug-in appliances, right? So a roaster or a slow cooker would be great options. Even an electric pressure cooker, like an Instant Pot, typically has a warm mode or a slow cook mode, so you could always move additional items to those appliances when they're done cooking, or possibly just find a recipe that matches the slow cooking feature, and you can just have that recipe cooking until you're ready to eat. Same for the cold dishes, right? If you're running out of refrigerator or freezer space, grab some small coolers. You can get styrofoam coolers or even the hard-sided coolers. Get some bags of ice, and then that way you can have, the pies that can stay cold. If you're doing different types of maybe fruit salad or vegetable salads, you can have those in there if you start running out of space. That's always a good thing, just to be food safe. So lastly, I want to touch on leftovers. So at least in my extended family, we always seem to have plenty of leftovers, and those get divvied out between the kids and the grandkids. And be aware, right? The shelf life in your refrigerator for those is roughly 3 to 4 days. We're not letting our leftovers sit for, a week or longer. Those do have a pretty short shelf life. So if you need to move them into a freezer for longer storage, certainly do that. But the shelf life is not super long, so just be mindful of how long those leftovers are sitting in your fridge. Yeah, so I'll send everyone to our turkey website. It's going to be great for not just turkey, but all sort of type of food safe information, along with things like leftovers, recipes, um, thawing information, cooking information, all that good stuff. So it's extension.illinois.edu/turkey. Or, of course, you can always give our office a call. We are open today and tomorrow before the holiday. So if you have any specific questions, you can always give us a call at 217-877-6042. So this is, I think we hit Halloween and it is just sweets through the end of December. So for the holidays, of course, these are the time of year where you're getting treats and recipes that you probably don't make throughout the rest of the season. And so I do think it's absolutely fine to really enjoy those. You can have the pie, you can have the things that are higher fat, higher sodium, less what we consider, less nutritious for us, but you're probably only making these maybe once a year, and so I do think it's worth enjoying those. So you may look at smaller portions, really being in tune with your hunger cues that day. So if you're like, I know I really want this piece of pie, you might maybe have one less roll or one less scoop of mashed potatoes or something that make sure that you actually have room in your stomach to comfortably eat that, and not at the end of the meal unbuttoning your pants and just trying to like just feeling kind of miserable probably. But if you are someone that wants to change or modify some of the nutrition in your recipes, you can certainly do that. So some great ways to do that are by reducing the added sugar, by reducing the sodium, and then reducing the saturated fats, which are the more solid fats at room temperature like butter. So some ways we can do that. So I'm going to start with added sugar. So one option for that is to, if it's in baking, you can very easily just reduce the total amount of added sugar. So brown sugar, white sugar in that recipe. If you just cut it by a quarter, that's already a great start, and doesn't really require any other modification to your recipe. So if you're making pumpkin bread, if you're making like a muffin or a cake, you're reducing that sugar just by a quarter to 25% less. You don't have to do any other reduction. That's a great way to just reduce the amount of sugar. If you want to kind of compensate, if you think, oh, it's not going to be as sweet, yep, that's kind of the point. You can always increase those sweeter spices, right? You can add a little extra cinnamon, a little extra nutmeg, and that can offset the reduction in sugar. You still get that really nice flavor out of it. For reducing sodium, if you're looking at like a casserole, for example, if you're doing green bean casserole, if you're doing mashed potatoes, you're making gravy. If you're doing things from packaged items, so you're doing canned green beans, you're maybe having the powdered gravy that you're adding, see if you can already start with a reduced sodium or a no added salt option just to begin with. And then if you find that it's not very salty, you can always have the salt shaker on the table and your guests can add to it as they need. That's a really easy way to do that. And then for reducing fat, this one's a little more challenging in the holidays because we might be frying a turkey, we might be doing some higher fat things like pecan pie. But if we can shift some of the maybe cooking, so if we're sauteing vegetables, using oil, which is a more unsaturated fat, which is more liquid at room temperature. So think like vegetable oil, canola oil, olive oil, and not sauteing those vegetables in butter, which is more of those solid saturated fats, you can kind of shift that ratio. You get more of those heart healthy unsaturated fats and less of the less heart healthy solid fats, saturated fats. Same for something like mac and cheese. If you're making mac and cheese with a roux, so you do the flour and the butter. You could even do half and half, right? You could do half butter and half oil in your roux with mixing with the flour before you add your milk and your cheese. And again, you're shifting that ratio of the types of fats to just a little bit less saturated, a little bit more unsaturated, a little more heart healthy. And again, it's not going to change too much on the cooking. So you can always, we've got a number of different blogs on our website about adapting recipes for this type of thing. So I'm going to direct everybody to extension.illinois.edu, and then you can search our blogs tab right at the top. Ooh, so I'm really surprised. I always think of, I live in a small town, and so my small town grocery store, if they bring in stuff that's not typical, I go, oh, that means that it's kind of getting popular. So I'm seeing more types of winter squash. Yes, so we've got acorn and butternut and spaghetti squash, but I'm seeing other types of winter squashes, so give those a try. They're really nice to cut in half and stuff. They make their own little boats out of them. You can do the classic, cinnamon and sugar, but you could also do more like a basic stuffing. You could stuff the squash in there. I'm really liking that broccoli and Brussels sprouts and some of these cruciferous vegetables are still having their moment. These are really great things in the middle of winter. And then in terms of fruits, like we're getting into cranberries and citrus fruits and apples and pears, and these are great additions to the table. They add a lot of color, a lot of nutrition. And so if you can make apple pie or apple crisp or pear crisp, these are going to be great side dishes and desserts for your holiday table. Yeah, it's coming. It's coming for us all. Unfortunately, I think we're if no one gets, no one in my house gets sick this year, that's always a plus. But I don't expect we'll be immune to it. So our goal with getting into cold and flu season is to continue to eat healthy options, because that is going to support our immune system. So things like high vitamin C foods with vitamin D, because we're really lacking that this time of year because we're not out in the sun. So adding a vitamin D supplement may be useful to really help keep the immune system strong. And then general, when we get into, our nose is stuffed up and we've got that sore throat and we're just feeling miserable, look at those easy meals. So if something like scrambled eggs on toast sounds good, go for that. If a can of soup works for you, you may want to start stocking up really easy meals that you can throw together when your family, your kids start getting sick. You can have something really easy when you kind of feel sick and your kids maybe don't want to eat very well. And then also making sure that we're hydrating. So having water available, hot tea is great. And then if you find that you're having a lot of issues with diarrhea or vomiting, consider adding an electrolyte drink, so Gatorade, or you can buy little powdered packs of electrolyte drinks, just to make sure that even though you're maybe not eating very well, make sure you're still hydrating. Yeah, so check out our website, extension.illinois.edu/turkey. That gives you all sorts of resources on getting your holiday table ready, including thawing and cooking of that bird, and lots of food safety information. Or, we're still here today and tomorrow. If you have specific questions, you can give our office a call at 217-877-6042.